So today I'm going to take you through the entire process of how I and how you can make sales through collabs. I've heard and been told myself that collab sales are dead, but that's just not the case, because I can testify firsthand that you can make a good source of income through collab sales. Now we need to leverage what we make as best we can, which basically means get the absolute most out of what we make and maximize its use. So my process is that I make loops for one day, purely just loops. Then the next day I'll come back, duplicate all the loop projects and turn those duplicate projects into full beats, my own beats that I make with the loops that I created the day before. I then go back to the loops after and I send those loops out to other producers. That way I'm sending loops out and getting collab sales through that, and then also getting my own beats out there, basically doubling up on the loops that I make. So the very first stage is creating the idea, arguably the most difficult part, but also one of the most enjoyable. Now making good loops from scratch does take practice and discipline. You can't just expect to create some crazy samples the first time you try, but I can guarantee you will get better as time passes. I used to be someone who just used loops. That's not a bad thing. I'm certainly not in the camp which says using loop isn't actually producing, because it definitely is. But it can be really useful to be able to create your own loops, because it just opens up a completely new avenue for income streams, collaborations and connections. So creating the idea. You want to make something that people will want to use. So it's important to have a particular genre and particular style in mind, because then you can make those type of loops in bulk and continue to send to those same producers each week. So be sure to have a style in mind and start experimenting with whatever instrument or sound that may be. Most of the loops that I create are very guitar based, because the genres that my loops are in the style of are very guitar based. Also because I really enjoy using the guitar and the melodic sounds that I can create with it. And there is no right way to make music, but what I find easiest is getting the bass down first. That may be a chord progression or the main melody, then you can build layers on top. So if actually making the loop or sample, you want it to be full sounding. The producer, when they hear it, needs to be inspired, and they aren't likely to be if the loop sounds empty and a bit boring. Obviously it's their job when they're making the full beat to leave space for the artist, so make sure you give them plenty of options for what they can use. Create at least 2 sections, maybe even a third. You can create a hook or chorus and then a verse. You want to be able to find that balance between fitting the sound of the style of music you're creating into the loop, but then also add your own little touches and having your own sound. So the best thing I can suggest for inspiring you and the production of your loops is to listen to other loops in the same style, or listen to full release songs in that style. Listen to the different layers and sounds, and listen to how the melodies fit together. When I've listened to loops that I've just thought sound so good, it's often because they have a lot of ear candy in them. Different layers playing little melodies that kind of just fit together and fill in gaps to create one cohesive piece that sounds full and interesting. So make sure to have multiple different layers that sort of fill in different gaps, and often they're kind of acting as a call and response. Sometimes it's even good to have some little perks in there that can spur the producer on who's using the loop to think about the kind of drums they want in it, the percussion, and gives the loop a bit more of a groove. Now once you've created the loop, you've got multiple different layers in it, you need to mix it. This is a really important step, because it can make or break whether producers want to use your loops, or if it's left on the side to collect dust. Of course the producer should mix the different layers together when they're making the full beat, but if it's mixed bad, the producer might not be interested in the loop in the first place. So it needs to be mixed well enough that it doesn't put the producer off, and I would go so far as to say that it actually improves the whole production of the loop in general, and can take it from being good to being great. It can enhance everything in it. The master level needs to be high and consistent. It's good to have some level of dynamic range, of course, but there needs to be an aspect of compression so that the different sections are consistent with one another and that everything is glued together. I would leave a bit of wiggle room below 0 dB though, so that the producer has some space to work with and ensures that the loop, crucially, doesn't clip. And that reminds me of another point. Make sure there aren't any unnecessary cracks or pops or crackles, because that can also put a producer off, and we want to create the highest quality loops that we can. As I said before, make sure you mix the loops so that they sound full, cover the spectrum as best you can, and try to separate the different layers into different areas of the spectrum. That will make the loop sound more cohesive and full, and all the layers working together, rather than just have them all sitting in the same place, clashing with each other. That largely comes down to the sounds and instruments that you choose to use in the sound selection process, so just bear that in mind at the start of making the loop. but of course, throughout the whole process of making it, you can switch in and out different sounds. Then you need to obviously arrange the loops so that not everything is playing at the same time, and it gives the best possible preview to the person who's listening to it. And this is key, and I know I keep saying that at each stage, but this really is. And it's also probably because each stage is really important. The loop needs to interest the listener. So I would say don't have everything come in at the very start, but equally don't leave it too empty. Give enough to the listener to make them want to listen on, because the patience of a producer looking for a loop is probably quite short when they're just going to be scanning through different samples. Bring different layers in at different points of the loop playing. Every 8 bars or whatever, bring in another layer. Have the verse after the chorus maybe. It obviously depends on what it sounds like, that's not a general rule. But often I find with the style of loops that I make, that if I had the verse play before the chorus of every sample, I'd probably have a lot of my samples used a lot less, because the producers wouldn't give it enough of a chance to get to the full main bit of the chorus. So maybe have a couple layers of the chorus at the start and then build it up. Then what's crucial is that you stem out the loop after it finishes playing. Every single layer needs to be stemmed out for the producer to be able to use it in the sample. You need to make it as easy as possible for them to use it, because otherwise they might be put off and decide to use something else. So how can you make it easy for them to use? Stem each layer out with 4 bars in between. So after the loop finishes playing, leave 4 bars and start the first stem. Also, in your organization of the stems, I think it makes most sense to organize them by section. Let's say you have 2 guitar parts, one for the chorus, one for the verse, as well as a lot of other layers. I wouldn't put the guitar layers next to each other. I would put all the things that play in one section first, so do each layer of the chorus first. Then after you've done that, then stem out each layer of the verse. The next part is pretty self-explanatory. You need to bounce or render out the file. You need to do this for the MP3 and the WAV. That's really important. You can also bounce out the individual stems for starters if you want to. That would be really leveraging what you're making to the max. Then name the sample and add your handle into the title of the sample so people know who it came from and can connect with you by DM if they need to. And also what's super important is to put the BPM and the key in the title. The BPM most importantly. If you don't know the key of the sample, you can always put it into Key Finder on the TuneBat website. Now you obviously need to have people or producers to send the loops to. So either you already have an email list of producers who make beats in the style of the loops that you're sending them. I can't stress that enough. There's no point sending 21 Savage type loops to a producer who makes Taylor Swift type beats. If you don't have an email list of producers to send to, you obviously need to collate some contacts, which you could do by searching the type beat style of the loops into YouTube and DMing those producers who make those type beats. DM them in a friendly, non-spammy way and try to make it personal. Don't just say, "Can I send loops?" Now send the loops to your email lists. Make sure you include the terms of use in the email. And if you're sending with just the email provider like Gmail, instead of using an email bulk service provider like MailSuite, make sure you're BCCing everyone. And make the email straight to the point, friendly, and again, personal. Then, obviously, you just have to wait and see if collabs come through. Depending on what platform you use will depend on what this looks like. Often, if you're using BeatStars, you'll have to accept the collaboration. So make sure you do that as soon as you can. You'll know if people like the loop if you get a few more collabs than you usually do. That's a good sign that the loop you sent was of interest to these different producers, and you can use that to make loops similarly in the future. Then comes the further waiting for an actual sale. But this is the easy part because all the hard work is done, and now it's about whether the producers that used your loops made a good beat with it, a beat good enough to sell, and the level of attention that they have on their YouTube and BeatStars. If they're a producer with a decent sized audience, obviously that means you're much more likely to make a sale, but don't be too fixated on that because you can actually make quite a lot of sales from small producers. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this video was insightful and helpful for you. If it was, please like and subscribe. That would just mean so much. And feel free to join the producer Discord in the description, the first link. That's a really good place to connect as producers and help each other. I'll see you in the next video.